Okay, we're live. We're live.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, Mandy. So as we're finishing our day, as we're ending our day, you're finishing your day. So tell me about you, and tell me all about you.
Well, thank you for having me on. So, I'm in Southern California, so way different time zone than you are.
Yeah,
Um, that's what I love about these virtual things now. It's like I can, see you and be with you, and there you are, all the way out there, and it's the end of your day. It's
it's crazy,
so
isn't it?
cool. Yeah.
It is
So,
absolutely crazy.
yeah.
So
So,
I met Mandy through an online platform, a platform that we both get involved in, which is called the Female Entrepreneurial Association. And they say your vibe attracts your tribe. And Mandy and I had a chat, and I thought it would be really interesting from some of the stuff that I've been doing around lockdown is trying to inspire women and obviously women take back control of their lives. And I did an interview with Madeline Black at the very beginning. And as I said to you, there were 17 women murdered during lockdown. Now, I'm actually quite frightened to find out what those figures are. And I don't want to compare them because it may not be a comparison from where we got those figures then. So, Mandy, you told me your story, and I think, you're amazing and what you're doing with it that I thought I want to chat to you. So, you tell me about you, where your story started, and where you are, and why you do what you do.
thank you. Yes, these are hard times, aren't they? So with my own story, I am a survivor of abuse, but it's really interesting because the abuse I experienced wasn't your typical type of abuse, physical, where we get beat up all the time and that sort of thing. So my story started out pretty harmless and appearing to be a great life, or what I thought was going to be a great life. I grew up in a very great, um, loving home, so that was awesome. But I wasn't really aware of. Uh, I guess I was kind of naive, and I wasn't aware much about abuse. Um, so I married my high school sweetheart, and off we went onto our life of college and exciting things. And we moved away from home. We moved from California out to the East Coast to New Jersey for him to get his master's degree. And that was a very stressful time for both of us, actually. And I noticed over the course of time, even before that, that his temper started getting worse and worse and worse. And it was kind of scary, but I didn't think that much of it quite yet. But when we moved away, things got really stressful, and he just kind of became somebody that I didn't even know. I married him for who he was, and then I felt like I got the rug pulled out from under me because he became somebody different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so anyway, we made it through those years. They were difficult, but we made it, and then we moved back home, and he got a really great job. And so we had our son, and things seemed to be better, but I guess he was getting really stressed at work, and that triggered some things in him. And then he started abusing us verbally. And I remember thinking, what in the world? Like, where's this coming from, And so it was like living on eggshells, like walking on eggshells. Like you didn't know, what's today going to look like? I don't know, And so that causes anxiety naturally. Um, and then things just kind of progressed from there. And I remember telling somebody had told me that verbal abuse almost always leads to physical abuse, just thinking, no, 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 that's not going to be us. How can the person I love
Mm-hmm.
hurt me? Right. So it was really confusing. So anyway, we went to counseling, and that held us for like another year or so, I guess. But then I started realizing, um, this it still isn't right. This wasn't really fixed. So we had a couple instances again, and I finally realized, okay, my son is 3 and he is not safe, and I am responsible for his safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like I had no other choice but to leave. And so we left. And unfortunately, I mean, it was good because we got safe, but unfortunately, it just kind of stirred him up, kind of like hitting a hornet's nest, you know. So he just gave me the hardest time. He kept harassing me, harassing me. He would blame me for his suicide attempts. He went and stood on this big famous bridge in San Diego and called me from it and said, "If you don't take me back, I'm jumping, you know, this is it." And I was like, what do you say to that, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
What
so
did what did you say to Mandy? I'll stop you for a minute. What did you say? Because it's very good, isn't it? They do emotionally blackmail you, and a lot of women will just say, "Yeah, um, okay, we'll do that," and that's where the spiral just continues. So
right,
what did
right.
you do there?
Yeah. I can't remember my exact words because this was about almost 2 decades ago, I'd say. But I do remember, you know, trying to help him understand, you know, I will still let you see our son, you know, with supervised visits, and I'll still talk to you, you know. And he was getting confused between me taking him back and me forgiving him. He kept saying, "You have to forgive me." And I was like, "You can't tell me what to do." You
Yeah,
know, I'll forgive you when I forgive you, but that's separate from taking you back. I won't take you back because I know that we're not safe, you know. And he kept saying, "But I love you, I love you." And I was like, "Well, that's not love, you know."
yeah,
In his mind, it was. And it turns out he had a mental illness.
right,
And
okay,
he, you know, walked the walk of saying he was getting help. But from, you know, what I was seeing and discovering, he really wasn't. So that's why, you know, I had to stay safe, right?
yeah,
So through that time, that was about 2 years. And then I got over that time, I should say, too. I finally realized that I needed to get a restraining order because um, one of those days he ended up showing up at my parents' house where we were living at the time, and I had a family member watching my son. Well, he thought that he should be able to get and have my son, so he jumped the gate, went around to all the windows and the doors, tried to unlock them and try to get in, which terrified the person who was in there.
mhm,
And they called the police, and I called the police because she let me know, and I was rushing over there to the home to try to see what we could do. And luckily, some friends of ours who were guys saw us frantically, you know, trying to drive back to the home, and they said, "Hey, you need help?" We said, "Yes." And so they came and followed us. And once he saw them and stuff, he took off and ran to where his car was parked around the corner. And I waited for the police. And let me tell you, that was the longest, like, I don't know, I think it was like 20 minutes that I had to wait. They
mhm,
kind of lived in like a different area that was off the beaten path. So it took a lot longer for the police to show up. But when they got there, you know, they told me, "Hey, you know, you might want to think about a restraining order because right now he's, you know, he's the father and you're the mother, but there's no, you know, there's no boundaries set really." And so I went and got the restraining order. And boy, did I learn a lesson there. When you get a restraining order, that does not stop them. It only sets boundaries, and then it shows the courts that they don't respect your boundaries or their court's boundaries. So it's very good for the judge to see that. So restraining orders are kind of tricky, I should say, because um, I can't remember what the stat is off the top of my head, but a lot of times when women get hurt, it's because gotten a restraining order, and it's usually within the first 24 hours. So I just want to say, like, sometimes restraining orders are great. Sometimes it's, you know, kind of triggering, and it doesn't mean that you don't have the right to stay safe. You do, but it just means it's something to think about. And also, you have to really, really watch your safety if you do that, and you know that's gonna, you know, get the person all riled up. So anyway, yeah, that was our experience with that. And then shortly after that, I went back to that house where we were living one day, came home and found a business card in the door. and it said FBI coroner robbery unit. And I thought, oh my gosh, great, this is it, he's either stolen again. So he had started a gambling problem, and he stole from some of the casinos and went to jail for just a little bit, but had come back out, or he actually committed suicide. And so I took that card with me up those steps and got on the phone and called them. And I was very surprised when they said, ma'am, are you aware of your husband, ex-husband, I had just divorced? Are you aware of his doings, of his whereabouts? And I said, excuse me? And they were like, we've been searching for him for the past 6 to 9 months. He's been robbing banks. And I was like, what are you talking about? I had no idea. Talk about naive. Oh my goodness. And so he said, can we come talk to you? And I said, of course, And so he came over the next morning, and there we sat at the table, and he threw out all the pictures from the banks of all the surveillance pictures. And there he was in the floppy hat. He even had a name. It had to do with the floppy hat that we used to wear on vacation. The day I bought him, or the shirt I bought him for Father's Day. And it was like, oh my gosh. And so he was telling me all the different banks and which day. And I was trying to like jot it down, but there were so many. There was like 20 or more. And that was within Southern California, the couple different counties.
And how did you feel, Mandy? Because the person that you met becomes this person. And that's hard to believe, isn't it? And you just think, so do you think that it was a Jekyll and Hyde? Do you think it was the mental illness that caused it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was a mix of things. I believe it was kind of like a perfect storm. So unfortunately, he did not have a good childhood growing up, and there was abuse in his home. So that was one thing. And then the other thing was the mental illness. And he was diagnosed with a couple different things. So it was borderline personality disorder, narcissism, and bipolar. So it wasn't, it was just, so it was between those three, facets of the mental illness. And then also, having a rough childhood and then throwing stress in that mix. I think all those things just kind of made him.
Did you see any of that when you started going out with him?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So I only saw one thing, and I remember that was a major red flag, but we were so young. And like I said, I was naive. Nobody had ever taught me about abuse or what to look for. He didn't hurt me, but he had done some damage to his brother's truck on purpose. He got mad. And so, yeah, that was a big red flag. And so that is definitely something to pay attention to. Yep.
Okay. And one of the things I see, Mandy, so I'm a financial advisor, as you know, and one of the things that I coach from a really, really early age is when people get together is have a separate bank account. And it depends on your background, because a lot of people, their mums and dads would have had a joint bank account. I always think that it's good to have a way out. And I have no reason for actually thinking that apart from financial services. Because then if anything does, like you just said, if anything transpires, you get to that stage. I'm just going to ask you financially, how were you? And could you see a road out? Because I see so many women trapped that they can't see out. They just can't see how they can get out. And because of that, they just stay. Where were you financially when you were at that, where you thought, I need out, but I don't know? Because I've met a lot of women that have gone into shelters and different things as well, because they just think that's the only way I can get out of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That breaks my heart when I hear that people stay because of the finances. I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, like if I have to sleep in the car, that's good with me. Because I just wanted peace, He kept coming at me, like, when you have something, you have some trauma happen, right? And you need to heal from that. Well, it was just trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, I couldn't heal. I was like, I couldn't catch up. And I had this little 3-year-old with me I was trying to raise, and it was just maddening. And yeah, with the finances, it was tricky because I um I I've always been a graphic designer. That's what I went to college for.
Mhm.
Um, for the past, I don't know, 15 years or more than that, actually, until I stopped doing that and now I do something different. But um, luckily, I had some part-time income. So that was helpful. And I was able to work from home. I was already doing that. So that was good. But still, I knew if I left, that wasn't going to be enough.
Mhm.
So it just so happened that we had recently purchased a home together. It was like a new home, and it was being built. It wasn't quite done yet. It was just like a tract home in a neighborhood. And so we were waiting for that to be done. And so my son and I moved into that once it was ready, and we lived there for like a year. But I realized that that was going to help us. So we ended up selling it because I knew I needed the money, and so we split it. And so that helped me kind of stay afloat. And then I did get remarried not that long after that. Um, so that money had carried me through. So that was my saving grace. But I was ready to live in my car. And I remember my dad saying, hey, we'll help you, and he specifically said, we won't let you go live in your car. I was like, okay, thank you. I was lucky because I realized a lot of women don't have that. So, um, thank God we have the shelters. And one other thing I didn't realize too, and I think a lot of women may not realize this, is that shelters aren't there only for you to go live in. A lot of them, at least by me, they also have resources for you there. They have lawyers, they have counselors, they have different things. I didn't realize that. Like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like that would have been so helpful to me
Yeah.
because, thank God I didn't have to go. I had a place to stay, but I really needed a lot of help as far as financial advising and counseling, and I needed lawyer help because when he went away after the FBI caught him and he went away to prison, his way of still controlling me, having power and control, because that's what it's all about, was taking me to court from prison. I didn't even know that was possible, right?
Oh my
But
goodness.
but they can do that telephonically from prison, I guess. So anyway, so yeah, that was another couple $1,000s, because I had to hire a lawyer because he was trying to make our son come visit him in prison, even though my son was, like 5, 6. That's tough on a little kid.
Yeah, that's one
Um,
of the things I was going to ask you. How did this impact your son, and where's your son at now?
mhm. um, he is in college. He's 19. And I'm so proud of him. He's such a great kid. Um, he luckily doesn't remember that much about all of that because when we left, he was only 3. And I just want to say, oh my gosh, I am so glad I left when I did.
Yeah.
It's like you really have to listen to your intuition. And with the safety course now that I teach for women, that we focus in heavy on that because it's there for a reason and it's there to protect you.
Yeah.
So yes, I knew it. The writing was on the wall. So yeah.
Yeah. And this is why, where you're at, and I want to talk about that in a minute, but where you're at, I would love the people, because as a financial advisor, some people think, oh, I don't want to speak to a financial advisor. I need to have money to speak to a financial advisor. And my thing is, you don't need to speak to a financial advisor. You maybe have to speak to some financial advisors, but that's not what I'm about. I'm about helping people, Mandy. And if I can help anybody plan a road out, that's what I'm about. And where you are now, that is just fantastic. But there will be a story where somebody has stayed for their son to get, and then their son has been impacted. And that's what I'm saying, how was your son impacted? Because then they would remember some of it, that maybe the son had maybe got to sort of 10, 12, 13, and remember all of that. Does your son want to see his dad?
Um, so they've kept in touch over those years. My just to back up a little bit, my ex-husband actually served that first 8 years, actually ended up being 7 years in prison for the bank robberies. And he got out and was out for about a year and had supervised visits with my son, which then turned to unsupervised because he appeared to be doing well. But then he disappeared because he ended up doing another crime, and then he had to go, hide because he knew he would go back. So then he was missing for another couple of years, and the police, just the local police, were looking for him. So, they didn't have a lot of resources like the FBI would. Um, and eventually he did end up robbing banks again in other states. So the FBI again got involved and put him away. So he's serving another term. But I mention all of that because through all of that, he has always written my son letters. And so, um, my son wasn't always great at writing back because he was younger and busy and, he's a kid. Um, and they've had some telephone conversations too, more so recently. But he has not gone to see him in prison ever since my son was little. So yeah, and I think too, I always ask him sometimes, how are you really doing? Um, because both he and I tend to be clams as far as like keeping everything in, which isn't so healthy. I've gotten better at that, but I've been trying to teach him, you really need to notice your feelings, and if there's something wrong, you need to speak to somebody about it, even if it's not me,
Yeah.
make sure that it comes out. So,
Sure.
yeah, so, I'm sure he knows, that his dad is not like the other dads, obviously, now that he's older. Um,
And do you
but
think that made him stronger?
I think it has. Yeah, I think it has.
Good.
Yeah.
So tell me where you're at in your life now, because I know that's how we met, and I know that you're learning, and you're like me. I just love learning because I want to actually spread the word as far as I can, and a lot of things I don't know how to do. So we met in the Female Entrepreneurial Association. You told me your story of what you're now doing, and I love that. So tell me where you're at and what your plans are for the future.
Thank you. Yeah. So I, I just over the past year, I started putting together all of the info that I have learned over the past decade or so in learning self-defense, because once I got that restraining order and I realized he wasn't going to listen to that, and he was still following me and showing up in the middle of the night. And once I realized too that he was involved in the criminal element, and who knows who else he was involved with, I don't know what was happening. So I felt so out of control and vulnerable, right? And so I finally realized it's up to me to be safe,
Mm-hmm.
because my dad can't always be with me. And if the police take 20 minutes to show up,
Yeah.
sometimes, what am I going to do? And
Yeah.
so I was like, all right, that's it. So I had my dad help me find somebody who was a high level self defense expert,
Mm-hmm.
and just started learning, just one, it starts with one workshop. So just one in person, whatever you're most uncomfortable, whatever you're most comfortable with. It's just starting with baby steps. And so I went from knowing absolutely nothing to knowing a lot over the course of the past, almost decade.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was learning all of that info, I realized a couple things. One, a lot of it is mindset and prevention. And the other thing is, oh my gosh, like the self defense world is kind of intimidating because it's
Mm-hmm.
like mostly taught by men, right? And so all the books I see and the websites, they're all like, ooh, big muscles, and like that's not what's going to help me. So, and then the other last thing, the third thing I was realizing was, oh my gosh, like all women need to know this information, not just women like me who are in a sketchy situation, but all women need to know this, because a lot of it is prevention, and
Mm-hmm.
it's setting your mindset, and it's knowing, like having a plan of
Mm-hmm.
what to do. If somebody approaches you, what do you do? Right.
Yeah.
So over the past year, I just started building and building and building on my website, and I started building a course to teach women all the stuff that I've learned, so they can learn it from a woman in a
Mm-hmm.
softer, friendlier space
Mm-hmm.
that's practical, and also learn it online, especially now that we're all, stuck at home. So the past couple months, I've taken through, I believe it's about 25 women now, in little groups. I took them through the course, and we even did it in person before COVID got too crazy. We had our masks on and we stayed further apart, and but they all really loved that, and they said that it was helpful to actually, try the things in person that they had learned online. So anyway, I remember that feeling of being vulnerable and not knowing what to do, like if something were to happen. And so I remember back then just feeling like I felt like I believe in God, and I felt like He was telling me, hey, don't forget what this feels like. There's no light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm vulnerable and I don't know what to do. Go teach it when you know it. So that's what I
Amazing.
want to do.
So you put it together. Well, what you can maybe do is give me your website, and I'll put the website up as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because so in Scotland, we don't, it's not too bad where I am. It's a town. It's only got 35,000 people. But in the last week, there has been 3 sexual abuse. Now, I don't know why, but the ones that they're looking for are 13 to 17-year-olds. And it's really strange because I was on a walkway and I met a lady and she gave me a sharp stone and she said, please take that sharp stone with you. And I kind of looked at her, this was before this, kind of looked at her and thought, oh, it's not as bad as that. But in actual fact, maybe it is. And maybe that's because I'm not going to give in. If I want to go for a walk, I'm going for a walk. But maybe I need to be empowered to go for the walk. Because this goes back 20 years ago. My mum used to say to me, you shouldn't go on that walkway. But is that what we've got to, that you've got to think twice about going on a walkway? And I know it could just be unlucky that there'll just be somebody there and I'm there at the wrong time. But if I had this self-defense and was able to, basically stand up for myself, then I would go the walkway. So I love what you're doing. I absolutely love what you're doing. So you can give us a website and, details of the courses and things like that. And that would be absolutely, so there's been so many things to this, because obviously there's been how you've taken control of your life, mental illness, how that came in, how your son's adapted from it as well. Financially, I wanted to talk about that part because, that part maybe just stops people. And I would love to get in that part where I can then just say to somebody, look, I can show you a tunnel. I can show you a way where you can go through and get out to the other end. And I hope somebody can, you can inspire someone, Mandi, to actually just take that action that they've been stopping themselves because of all of these things, and then take control and actually turn it into something positive and teach other women how to empower themselves from something that you become really passionate about.
Yeah, definitely. I believe, that every woman deserves to be safe, right? And I believe too that we don't have to feel, vulnerable like that. So we definitely have options. And I love what you're doing too, and that you're helping women understand that you don't have to be stuck. There's different ways, to make things better.
Yeah, and that goes way, way back. I used to write a financial column. It was called Money Matters. And in that, it was sort of basic steps of, some people just don't want to know anything about money because a husband deals with it. Sometimes that'll be it. Or, there's a lot of that. I'll go and do a pension scheme for women. And when I speak about pension, I don't know, I don't need to know about that. My husband does that. And I'll say, no, 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 no. You need to do it. You need to take control. Yes, your husband maybe does things, but you need to be independent.
For sure.
And understand, and what if something happens to a husband? I mean, I've gone and dealt with women where their husband has passed away, unfortunately, and they have not got a clue where to start. I've brought stuff out in bin bags, because they really don't know where to start. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned. Take control of it. I talk in primary schools. I try to coach kids from a really, really young age that they should just see what money is about, understand the value of money, be more aware of what money is, and grow up with a different, sort of look on money. So yeah, I hope we can both maybe add to, to what some people are going through just now. So that was fantastic, Mandi. We have been 29 minutes and 22 seconds. So what would you say to anybody who is stuck right now from a lot of different reasons, from maybe being in the position where they think, I need to get out of this. I don't even, in fact, they've maybe not even been aware that they've been abused. But listening to some of the stuff you've said, thought, actually, I'm going through that and I can see I'm on the spiral. Maybe I should take control right now. What would I do? What advice would you give them just now?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say, that a lot of times we talk about physical abuse, because that's the most obvious, but there's other types of abuse too. And I think the one that people really miss out on is emotional abuse.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a really great website. It's called the Mend Project, MEND
All right.
Project.
Uh-huh.
I think it's .org, or it might be .com. I think it's .com actually.
Okay.
And they list out all the different forms of emotional abuse. And I really, really think that more people need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
As I was saying, with my abuse, it started with verbal. So, we'd be doing the dishes and he would just start calling me an effing bitch and start throwing dishes and they'd break or whatever. And I'm like, what is that? Well, that was verbal abuse. Nobody deserves to be called that. And then emotional abuse, it was, when he would abuse me and I would call him out on it and he would say, what? That is nothing. You should hear what all these other guys are doing, in my group that I'm going to for anger
Uh-huh.
management. That's gaslighting. That's what they call gaslighting. And that is emotional abuse, and and then him later denying that he ever hurt me. That's so bad. So yeah. And people don't realize too how emotional abuse plays out on you. It causes anxiety, it causes PTSD. People don't understand that.
Yeah.
um so I
People
just
can't move on with their life. I mean, I had a stage in my life where a guy did similar, not emotion. Well, he impacted me, and where you feel not worthwhile. Do you know that's what
Yeah.
that's where they take the power, isn't it?
Yes.
They want you to feel worthless.
Mhm.
That's the way they get the power,
Yeah,
by making you
exactly.
feel less.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And then after, if you do that over years and years and years, you lose yourself. And so,
Totally.
yeah, when I left, I was like, oh my gosh, like, who am I? I had to
Yeah.
go, like, re-find myself and remember, like, what do I like doing? I like going to the beach. I like farmers markets. It's like you have to re-find yourself after
Uh-huh.
that. And so I just really encourage um, ladies to know too, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I know sometimes it doesn't feel like it. It feels like there's no way out, but
Mm-hmm.
there is. Like, if you can look at my whole story, listen to my story, which was in the news, by the way, which was really embarrassing, right? And so if shy, naive me can go from being completely powerless and knowing nothing into now being able to share my story and have practical tips on when I go out and about, I go shopping, all of that. Like, I know how to keep myself safe. And
Mm-hmm.
so whether they learn it from me or they learn it somewhere else, like, it's really, really important to learn.
Yeah.
And the nice side benefit of that is you start gaining your power back and you start to be empowered yourself.
Yeah.
So it's really, really helpful in all areas of life, for sure.
Yeah. And I think, so we met in the women in the FEA, and going back to that, and I think that you put yourself in a community of women. Women inspire women. If you're in a group of like-minded women, so really, I think you should shout out in the FEA as well, because really, lots of people need to hear your story, and lots of people need to hear how it can help them. Um, and again, when you have a tribe of women all trying to inspire each other, it is really, really powerful as well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. That's what I've been trying to build too through the course. I realized too, a lot of it is community.
Yeah,
So now I've built a Facebook group for that, because I think, like I was saying, when you're learning these things, it helps to have other women come alongside you. I
yeah,
remember when I was learning, there was one lady who was super encouraging to me. She happened to be there for um, something she was learning as well, but she came up to me that first day and said, "Hey, so nice to meet you. I'm so glad you're here. You're doing the right thing." And I was just like, I know her now, we're good friends, and I'm like forever grateful for that,
yeah.
because we need to support each other, for
Totally.
sure.
And Mandy, see these relationships. I've built a lot of relationships in various different groups, and these people are amazing people because they understand what you're doing, what you're trying to do. You know, whereas sometimes your friends kind of maybe think, what on earth is she doing? But someone who relates to you knows why you're doing it.
Right.
So that was fantastic. And I'm going to put your website and your Facebook group and mine as well. If you have anybody that, you know, is struggling with money, who I've set one up, it's called Money Matters. I would love to help them with that part. And I've set one up, obviously the Women's Hub, as I said. People at the moment, in fact, there's a lot of different things that actually, if someone is really struggling, we've got various different things that they're doing. You know, if somebody's struggling, they actually have hand signs and so on, because they maybe can't say because, you know, there's an issue. But there are people really, really struggling right now, and we need to reach out. So hopefully we've maybe tried to help somebody, Mandi, and we'll give them the contact details.
Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for your heart. I love that you care about women so much and you want to help them.
Oh, absolutely. You too, Mandi. And, you know, all the best. And I hope, you know, you can help so many more women take back control of their life.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
take care.
Take
Bye.
care, Audrey. Bye.